It's time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. The suspended acting chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Ibrahim Magu, has been released after 9 days in detention. Magu was released on July 6 following allegations of corruption brought against him as captured in a petition filed before the Justice Ayo Salami-led presidential panel by the Attorney General and Minister of Justice Abubakar Malami, senior advocate of Nigeria. In the petition, he was accused of being unable to account for interest accruing from recovered funds of about 550 billion naira. He was also accused of insubordination and purchase of property in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. In the meantime, Mr. Magu has written to the panel asking for copies of the petition as well as others that might have been filed by other individuals. I mean, this story is out there. This one, at first, there was this back and forth about Magu even being in detention and the likes, but finally, he's got out of detention after 9 days. I mean, what do you have to say about this? I mean,
a lot has happened, and there's a lot to be said, a lot to be chewed on. This developing story, as far as I'm concerned, is still developing because we've not heard the last of it. The police has denied that Magu was in their custody. So who exactly held Mr. Magu for these 9 days that we had? The presidential panel, do they have the power? Where was he kept? I listened to an interview with Femi Adesuwa, one of the spokespersons for the president yesterday. He said he wasn't kept in the presidential villa. So where was he kept? But for me, it's beginning to look like, you know, the article that was released last week by some writer who said there's a banana peel in the Anti-Corruption Agency of Nigeria, because all the 4 chairpersons that have been appointed, if you count Magu, who was in acting capacity for this long, they've been removed in controversial circumstances. Banana peels or poison chalice, there's something wrong with the act that sets up the EFCC and how we appoint people there and how we deal with them.
Dr. Abati?
Well, a number of issues here. I think it's good that at the end of the day, Mr. Ibrahim Magu has been released from detention because the law is very clear. The Constitution says you cannot be detained for more than 48 hours.
But this was more than 48 hours.
Within 48 hours, you should be charged to court, except the circumstances are extraordinary. However, in 2015, the last bill that President Jonathan signed into an act was the amendment to the Administration of Criminal Justice Act. Now, under that Administration of Criminal Justice Act, agencies can be allowed to keep persons beyond a period, but not more than 2 weeks, 14 days. That's what the Act says. But that has been serially abused, particularly under the administration that took over from President Jonathan, that is the Buhari administration. And the concern is that the EFCC has been particularly culpable in this regard, and persons have been kept in EFCC custody under the watch of Mr. Ibrahim Magu for even beyond what the law stipulates. There are persons who have been kept for more than 30 days, like Senator Shehu Sani. There are persons like Femi Fani-Kayode who have been kept for more than 78 days, you know, beyond what the law stipulates. Because all that the EFCC needs to do is to just go and secure an approval from a magistrate court. And the impression was that those approvals were being procured, no, procured is the wrong word, were being secured even, you know, before the fact. And so you now find a situation whereby the chairman of the same EFCC, under whose watch some of these infractions were committed, you know, now found himself in a situation whereby he himself challenging that he had promoted and encouraged.
What goes around?
I think that is quite ironic in my view, you know, but it is good at the end of the day, as we have argued on this program, that look, Mr. Ibrahim Magu, whatever may be the allegations, has a right to fair hearing.
Yes.
He has a right to proper defense under Section 36 of the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria. Now, Mr. Magu's lawyers have also alleged trial by media. And again, many Nigerians are saying, this looks ironic. If you are saying media trial. Also on this program, we have always argued in this matter against trial by media. Because we have said, to the best of our knowledge, these are allegations. They've not been proven. The Salami panel is not a prosecutorial panel.
Yeah.
It's just a fact-finding panel. And nobody should prejudge the outcome. As far as we are concerned, Mr. Magu is innocent until proven guilty.
Yes.
But the lesson we have seen now, we've seen that people who were talking about karma, may also have a point about the irony of the situation. Now, Mr. Magu's lawyers are talking about trial by media. We don't support it, but the people who talk about karma say this was a method that Mr. Magu himself encouraged as the acting chairman of the EFCC. And I've seen on social media persons like Senator Oseni saying, well, okay, this is like the medicine that you give out to other people.
Some people argue about Oseni's style by saying maybe it's just sour grapes. Maybe because he was treated that way, that's why he's coming out.
Well, the people who say karma, yes, you can accuse them of sour grapes, but can you question the validity of their claims?
No.
And I think there is a lesson here for the next chairman of the EFCC. Whoever is the next chairman of the EFCC, confirmed, must learn a lesson for this. And the police, who are very fond of parading suspects, must also learn the lesson from this. That's very important.
And newspapers, too, please don't support the police when they do that by publishing those pictures. All right, thank you so much. Caution is the watchword this morning. That's all on News and Live. We'll take a short break. We'll have to return and take Rotus, Michael, and Aaron.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Joining us now is our ever-reliable Rotus Odiri, who is now here to give us Africa Business Update. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Adesuwa.
Good morning.
And, good morning, Rufai.
Good morning, Rotus.
Good to see you guys. So we kick off African businesses with the Central Bank of Nigeria. They are calling for an upward review in fines and penalties. This was at a hearing for a bill to replace the act to repeal, rather, the Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act of 2004 with the same act for 2020. This act was initially released. They made this, at this hearing at the National Assembly. This was put together by the Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance, and Other Financial Institutions. So they want the fines to be reflective of current realities. This bill was initially put together in 1991. It's been revised several times. I remember reading the 98 or is it 97 amendment, and it said, I believe there was a portion that said something about banks that don't fall in line with the regulations should be fined like 50,000 naira. And for banks that make billions upon billions in profits, those fines have to be reviewed upwards. It's already passed the first and second readings at the Senate, and this hearing was part of that process to make sure that they replaced what was in 2004 with what was in 2020. One more time, that is the Act to repeal the Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act of 2004 with 2020. Great measure, makes a lot of sense. What I would appeal, and others in the business community would appeal to the central bank, is with regards to monetary policy, and while we're talking about, realities of 2020, please consider interest rates with regards to savings and investments. I continue to talk about this all the time. Had a chart where we looked at the 10-year movement of treasury bills and interest rates, which were higher than interest rates, but inflation, but have now fallen in 2020. So, while the central bank is well within its rights to want to review fines upwards, many in the business community are asking that interest rates are also looked at, because with a one-year T-bill doing 3.2, 3.3% and inflation at 12.4%, you're getting a negative real rate of return. By the way, inflation for June should be released tomorrow, year-on-year inflation for June from the Bureau of Statistics, so we're waiting to see that. To maize now, the Maize Association of Nigeria is saying that production for this year will fall by 25%. They are attributing this to COVID-19. They're saying COVID-19 is affecting output for maize. They did commend the central bank for no longer allowing the imports, or at least no longer providing foreign exchange for the imports of maize through Form M. Remember, we talked about that on the show, where the central bank said Form Ms are no longer going to be allowed to be presented to the bank in order to bring in maize. So they're trying to focus on domestic production. And then here comes the Maize Association of Nigeria saying that output is going to drop by about 25%. They said they were targeting 25 million metric tons of production this year. I remember when I was on the show, if you look at annual production for maize, domestic production, it's been between about 10.5 to 10.7 million metric tons. So a 25% drop from what they're looking at, 25 million, brings it down to about 18. Will they hit that number? Remains to be seen. We'll have to see what the numbers show when we finally get a reading on that. But again, maize production has averaged about 10.5, 10.7 million metric tons. Consumption is higher than that, so we're yet to meet up with that. But they say they can meet up. They say they're happy with what the central bank has done in restricting imports. So we'll see if that happens. But again, the main pickup here is that they're saying that due to COVID-19 and other conditions, production will drop this year to the tune of about 25%. To tech now. MTN received a go-ahead from the NCC, the Nigerian Communications Commission, to trial eSIMs, electronic SIMs. So, of course, a SIM is your subscriber identity module. And what it does is it's supposed to, identify you for the particular carrier whose network you are using to make phone calls and browse and so on and so forth. So there are some phones, I think the iPhone 11 Pro and a couple other phones that are no longer allowed for the use of physical SIM. So it's actually embedded in the phone itself. So it allows for more flexibility with regards to switching carriers where you no longer have to actually move a physical SIM to another phone. And also for security, there have been cases of, cybercrime where phones are stolen and the physical SIM, if it's not locked, because presently you are supposed to put a PIN number on your SIM to protect it. But presently, SIMs can be transferred to another phone and then unauthorized transfers can be made. With this now, with technology allowing for an electronic SIM where you no longer have to use a physical one, that would, pile on the security. So MTN is going to trial this for 1 year in Nigeria with a select number of subscribers and see how it goes. But many thanks to the Nigerian Communications Commission for allowing them to do this. Hopefully other carriers will pick this up. And I'm a strong believer in tech as in solving problems for folks. And I think this is a good measure to adopt. Finally, South Africa's inflation from May came in at a 15-year low at 2.1%. And the South African Reserve Bank is supposed to be meeting next week. They are wondering whether this will cause them to push cut interest rates further. It's doubtful as to whether it is. What's being said now is that the South African Reserve Bank is going to be monitoring conditions and seeing whether or not they would need to cut rates. They've already cut rates twice now to try to assist the economy in stimulating aggregate demand to meet up with the fallout from COVID-19. So inflation, more people stayed at home, less spending, fuel prices dropped. That's sort of the kind of things that contributed to inflation kind of decelerating in South Africa. And that ought to do it for our African business update.
Thank you very much, Rotus. Dr. Abati, do you have something to say?
Yes, well, I wanted to comment on what you said about Bofia. The bankers who are asking for a review of the penalties.
The CBN.
The CBN asking for a review of penalties within Bofia. I think they have a great point. But the issue is not just about the Bofia. It's also about the general framework of legislation in Nigeria with regard to penalties. The point of it is that, look, we have many laws, existing laws, extant laws, that's the technical word, where the penalties are so small, so cheap, that the penalties that are codified in the law themselves encourage impunity. Right. So beyond Bofia, if we say the penalty for an infraction is just 50,000 naira, as you quoted, now, how much is that? That's no money. It's the same thing with also the Petroleum Act. In the Petroleum Act, all these concerns that we have expressed about oil spillage and all of that, the penalties, go and check the laws. Those penalties are very small. Now, these were laws that were made during the colonial period at an ancient time, if we may use that phrase. And the figures have inherited from the past. So those figures themselves encourage impunity. Take the criminal code, which has been an issue before the National Assembly, or the penal code that some states in the north are looking at. If you look at the penalty is disproportionate to the offense. For example, criminal code, the sections relating to rape. The National Assembly, the Senate, the other day, is now saying, look, if you commit rape, it should be life imprisonment. It should not be 14 years imprisonment. The assumption is that there is a gap between the felony and the proportion of the punishment. So what we need is a general, continuous, sustainable review of laws. So it's not just in the banking sector, it's virtually in every sector. And that's a responsibility that the National Assembly must take very seriously.
Well said, Doctor.
Well,
completely agree.
My comment was going to be on maize. I mean, what's this season without our local delicacy and street food, our favorite maize? And I do hope that we'll meet that shortfall the farmers are talking about. But thank you so much, Reuters.
Thank you.
Moving on now to more business news with Michael Wilson joining us from London. Hello, Michael.
Morning. I normally start with the Asian markets, but this story is much bigger than that, and it's about Twitter, and it's about this breach of their security. Billionaires Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, amongst many prominent US figures who have been targeted by a hacker attack on Twitter, a Bitcoin scam. The official accounts of Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Kanye West also requested donations from the cryptocurrency. It looks like the hackers appear to have got, and I say appear to have got because we're still wondering about the details of the story, away with about $100,000. But actually, and what Twitter's saying is they think it was a fairly coordinated attack. But worse than that, it looks as though Twitter employees themselves were tricked into giving away security details of these accounts. Now, the company has said, and I'm quoting here, it said it's taken significant steps to limit access to such internal systems. And the CEO has said this is a tough day for us as Twitter. We feel terrible this has happened. I mean, by any stretch of the imagination, this is probably the worst hack of a major social media platform so far. It's important because, as you know, all these social media companies are very much in the sights of politicians, big business and the rest of it around the world, and also from journalists themselves, because anybody can stick, it seems to me, anything on social media and surround and give false news as they wish. So this is a real problem, and I suspect this story is going to run and run. It certainly will be a big legal story. It will certainly be a big financial story and a big social story as well, and make all of us question whether we should be using these platforms in the first place. And also, here's a maxim for you. If it looks too good to be true, it is. If it's free, somebody else is making money out of it from you, so that you have been warned. Right, enough of the lectures. China and Hong Kong shares fell today. Worries about the cooling more cooling of relations between the United States and China. China's yearly GDP reading for the second quarter was 3.2%, slightly above the consensus, so that's quite good. Retail sales were slightly disappointing, so I think what we're seeing there is a slight reduction in demand, and that's not a great thing from what is probably the world's biggest economy. So therefore, equity markets in Asia was sort of in the red, and on the idea that spending and investment in China remains weak. China's relationship with the US and the UK, as you know, has deteriorated during the week. The British government has banned Huawei from its 5G network by 2027. President Trump passed legislation also about Hong Kong's special status. And in addition, it looks like the US government may seek to target individuals or organizations that are helping China. And the moves by the US and the UK are all on this decision by the Beijing administration to introduce a law that's chipped away at Hong Kong's autonomy. It's the boil is slightly off this right now, because remember, the president of the United States is facing an election in November, so he doesn't want to upset too many people. However, he may go into that election with some good news. I know it's November, but we've got to start somewhere. The US economy appears to rebound. Industrial production increased by 5.4%. That's a big increase on the 1.4% that was posted in May. Again, this pace can't continue. It's likely that this will actually gradually, this pent-up demand will be sated eventually, and that steep upsurge in economic activity will probably taper off. ECB meets today, rates to hold steady. The pandemic emergency purchase programme, which has increased, it sounds very complicated. It's basically giving money to try to help the various economies. And it could be a sign because those economies have been doing reasonably well. I say reasonably well because we're not doing very well, as you well know. But in the face of all the problems, doing reasonably well. And this could be a sign that the ECB will be reining in its recovery programme. We'll hear the interest rate decision. Don't expect any change there, but the detail of the press conference from 1:30 your time, and Rotus and I'm sure we'll be talking about that in the Global Business Report later on this afternoon. UK jobs numbers don't really tell anything that we don't actually know. There are about 750,000 people out of work because of the COVID-19 virus. The UK economy is recovering much more slowly than previously thought, and a bad sign for it. In a recent survey that came out this morning, 29% of businesses say that they're actually going to let. On the plus side, the reduction in jobless claims from 7.8 to 7.3 suggests that some people did return to work, but the furlough runs out towards the end of the year, and we'll find out there. Finally, commodities. Oil rallied yesterday on the back of the EIA report showing that US stockpiles had dropped by nearly 7.5 million barrels. The consensus was of 2.25 million. Gasoline inventories too, so that helped the US Brent crude and so on. And we know that OPEC have been meeting, and we know the OPEC Plus decision to slightly reduce the kind of cuts, but whether that will help, I don't know. And also, some nations, of course, within that rather loose framework have been, cheating is probably too strong a word, but they have been continuing with production, even though the central basis of OPEC has said, cut it, they need to come in line by October. And finally, metals were a mixed bag yesterday. Gold slightly up, silver not really. Copper, again, Dr. Copper, this is a great indicator of where things are going. It lost about 1.5%, but the suspicion from the markets is that copper lost that because traders have had a very good run and they've taken their money off the table. That's the global look so far.
Right. I just quickly want to ask a question. Is it that the furlough scheme didn't work if you're still having about 26% of employers saying they're still going to let workers go, owing to the fact that the British government spent a lot of money on the furlough scheme and it's going to end in October? So if 26% of employers are saying we're going to let members of staff go, then what if the furlough schemes end in October? Isn't it going to be 50%? Isn't the British economy going to take a clear beating?
It will take a beating. It absolutely will, and and the real decision. It's not so much. I mean, unemployment's very, very important, but you hit upon the central thing straight away, which is this: it's the amount of money that's actually been spent. And the problem for our Chancellor right now, it's all fine giving away this money. The question is, what taxes are going to rise to actually rein that money in? And what will that do to the economy? I think that's the kind of question. I think businesses will probably rebound in a slightly different way. I mean, I've been quite surprised, just generally speaking, seeing how supermarkets, retail stores and so on have adapted to the change. It's not good, but it's better than terrible. But the thing is that the real taxes are in most economies, income tax, purchase tax and inheritance tax, certainly. And we talked about capital gains tax yesterday. That's not going to fill a hole. The only thing that's going to fill a hole is national insurance, is income tax and purchase tax, or VAT. And those are big taxes, and those could start affecting every household in the UK from the turn of the year, basically. It might be as early as October, but there will be an autumn statement about this. But that's the crucial thing. It's how much dare you tax the population before you start reducing the growth to a level below where it ought to be going as it naturally rebounds. That's the difficult thing for the Chancellor to do, or the Finance Minister here to do, which he is having, or even if he doesn't do it, it's a question of how much and when that will actually happen. That's a really difficult decision.
Well, Michael, I know that, the Bitcoin scam on Twitter is a developing story, but this is not the first time you will have Twitter being compromised by hacks. Are there certain specifics that we still need to know? Because each time it happens, Twitter will come around and say, well, we are looking into it. And even now, it's still a developing story. Is it enough for Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, to just tell us, well, you know, we're looking at it, we're trying to understand what is happening? Are there penalties? Why is it that the security system is not working?
Yeah, I think the worrying thing about this one is you're right that all these social media platforms probably face hacks every day. The thing about this one, which is particularly worrying, is it looks as though Twitter's staff themselves were tricked into giving away security details of some of the accounts. Now, this is the way that hackers do things. I'm not a hacking expert, and it's an incredibly complex activity, obviously. But I think that what one ought to be doing, just as a general kind of safety thing, is actually holding back on revealing too much to these social media platforms, because basically the currency of the future is going to be data. It is now, but it will even be more data and even more in the future. And I think that you should be very, very careful indeed. You're absolutely right. They make all the right noises and then somebody else comes and hacks in again. Very unsatisfactory.
Indeed. There's a subliminal message that we can hack your fortress and you can do nothing about it. Thank you so much, Michael Wilson, our ICE business analyst there. And Aaron Akarejola now joins us for COVID updates globally. Hello, Aaron.
Yes, good morning to you.
Good morning, Aaron.
Good morning, Doctor. Good morning to you, Rufai.
Is there a poem?
Is there a poem for Adesuwa?
None in the works.
Okay.
I'll be patient.
Let's just...
now we know where you stand.
Yes, I do. My allegiances are very clear. All right, okay, moving on. And let's start it off from Africa.
I hope to know he's watching.
Now, starting off from how things are playing out in Africa, without a doubt, COVID-19 has seen a massive, sharp spike in Africa. At the moment, 644,205 is the number of cases confirmed in Africa. The deaths are still relatively low compared to other continents. 14,044 is the number today. But quite worrying is the fact that almost half of that, as a matter of fact, 47% of that is actually domiciled in one place alone, the land of the Madiba. Talking about South Africa, at the moment, have passed the 300,000 mark, looking at how things have actually played out in terms of South Africa. Right now, 311,049 cases have actually been recorded, although the deaths are still relatively low, understanding that Egypt have had more death cases than South Africa, although South Africa by a long shot have had more confirmed cases. You can actually see it there, but there are still a lot of experts are still saying, owing to the fact that over 2 million tests have been done, close to 2.3 million tests have actually been done so far. It still is, maybe it's the reason why South Africa has so many and the volume is really high in South Africa, but it's one to watch out for. Yesterday, record numbers were also being brought in from confirmed cases. Well over 12,000 were actually recorded yesterday, and amongst them was the Minister of Mineral Resources, Gwede Matanche. Right, he's also down with COVID-19 at the moment. Quite worrying for things playing out in South Africa. They've gone into a certain kind of lockdown, and we're hoping things get better. And moving on to South America, where because if you look at the world figures right now, South Africa in the top 10, they've overtaken Britain in the number of cases of COVID-19. As a matter of fact, when you look at it right now, the second most infected country in the world, Brazil, has had its president test positive for the second time again. Jair Bolsonaro has tested positive. Remember, he tested positive on the 7th earlier in the month, and right now he's tested positive again. He's still self-isolating, and I hope he doesn't go around, because initially he was making a fuss about hydroxychloroquine and the fact that he has taken it and it is getting him up and running. But right now he did a test yesterday again and it came back positive, and quite worrying for the man there. But today's focus, where I want to vista into, is the fight and the race to getting a vaccine. And as a matter of fact, when we look at how things are actually playing out, if they can help us with the vaccine slide, you get to see it close about 140. As a matter of fact, 155 is the actual number of vaccine researches that are in the works. Right now, 140 of them are in preclinical stages. All right, animal testings are being done at the moment, and 23 of them have gone into human phase. And phase 1 of them has seen about 19 of them being given to small sets of people. Phase 2 has seen 11. Phase 3, which is where the big boys are right now operating, is what is getting everyone kind of excited, understanding that we've seen the likes of, we've mentioned them before, AstraZeneca, we've mentioned them, Moderna in the US, and also the Chinese, I must actually say, they're actually doing quite well for themselves in terms of phase 3 testing at the moment. As a matter of fact, it's only one Chinese company that can say that they've entered phase 4 for limited testing. It's not been approved yet because Sinovac and Sinosure Sinopharmacy are the 2 companies in China that are doing phase 3 testing, and one of them has actually even started testing limitedly on human beings at the moment. But I must actually say that at the moment, what is getting everyone in the UK excited is what is happening with the University of Oxford. As a matter of fact, Sarah Gilbert is one name that has been thrown around time and time again. This is a woman that has been dedicated to the work. As a matter of fact, her story is quite phenomenal, understanding the fact that when she started developing this vaccine, she actually did a test trial on her triplets. So this is to those who were rioting and to those that were protesting in South Africa. This is almost a shame to them because she tested the vaccine on her triplets. They actually came out successful, and as she went on, that's the level of dedication this woman has actually put into it. And at the moment, she's actually doing real well, and they are very confident. That's the University of Oxford and AstraZeneca. They are very confident that by the fall, come September, October, we should be having doses of this vaccine at the moment. And they are claiming that they can produce over 2 billion, and it will be given out. As a matter of fact, AstraZeneca has promised and written it down ironclad that they will not sell it for profit, but during this during this crisis era, but rather they will actually push it further and start selling it for profit after the crisis era is over. So we're looking at so much happening with AstraZeneca. At the same time, what is happening in the US with Moderna also?
Well, I think that that's very positive news. If you look at the coronavirus tracker, the progress that is being made by scientists across the world is something that is commendable. You have mentioned AstraZeneca, you've mentioned Moderna, you've mentioned the Oxford Study Group led by Professor Sarah Gilbert. Professor Gilbert is leading a team, and we're told, after the good news you brought yesterday about Moderna progressing to human trials, and then we had the good news from Oxford about the progress that is also being made in terms of the indication that by September, by fall, as some other people call it, we have a different name for it in Africa. That there will be there will be a vaccine.
Yes, there should be.
So I think all of this is very encouraging.
Yes, it is.
There is Sinopharm, there is Sinovac. And then there's also that group at the Moscow State University in Russia that attempted human trials on 38 persons. But I hope, I guess that, look, the rest of the world is enthusiastic about this development. We've been told that the process takes, like 18 months, like 24 months.
Usually it should take 5 to 10 years.
but
thanks to Operation Warp Speed.
Now it's shorter.
They've actually collapsed it.
It looks like it's shorter. But, so we look forward to what happens by September. I think it will help humanity generally. What is important, however, is not competition, but global solidarity, which Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, the Director General of the WHO, continues to call for. However, disturbing news. Yesterday, there was another report that indicated that even when persons have recovered from COVID-19 and they have developed immunity, there is no guarantee that they cannot spread the virus. And I think that that's very sad news, if indeed that scientific revelation is true.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Aaron Akerjola. There's so much to talk about, but we'll have to leave it there.